Next piece we're going to discuss is one that was titled, with a working title of Baker Street Pubs. This is another track from Movement 2. And with this one, the initial inspiration came from a desire to write a piece that was either in an alternate tuning, that wasn't just sort of a standard or a dropped tuning, um, or to use a partial capo. And I went with the partial capo idea. So essentially, this piece starts um, with a capo on the 7th fret on the acoustic guitars, um, but only covering the low E to the B string. So the high E is free, still tuned to its regular high E. And the reason for that was I wanted to try and play around with melody a bit more on this piece. Obviously, in Movement 2, it's important to use melody effectively and have sort of very strong melodies. And that's what I felt I achieved here by using the partial capo. So I'll start off by just playing you this, and I will also take off. There's a reverb effect that I used on one of the tracks as well that I am just going to take off when I can find it. That's okay. Okay, so you can hear just that sort of reverb sound, that reverb effect that's playing through on this channel. I believe it's this one here. And what it's doing essentially is it's adding different harmonics in. And sort of adding a slight tremolo effect. And the reason I did that was again to try and create an atmosphere, because it's something. The thing with Movement 2, with it being so based in melody and being sort of a palette cleanse from the first movement, I wanted to try and really relax the feel, and go with that sort of more ethereal side of progressive music, like your Pink Floyd sort of soundscape ideas. That was the aim with the whole of Movement 2, really, barring the piece called Winterbourne View, which I'll talk about in another video. So the idea was to create these soundscapes that weren't particularly in a song format because they didn't need to be. They're soundscapes, and they're just more sort of free-flowing. So what I'll do is I'll let this play for a little bit. You can see there's a lot that's gone into this one. So what we'll do is we'll start playing it, and I'll stop it when I find a section that I need to talk about. So the first part I'm going to talk about is this part here that comes in around bar 12 or bar 11. And the idea with this was very similar to the sort of delay ideas that I used on the soundscape and synthwave experiments, where I was using delay to create these trails and add a bit of a more of an ambience to the piece. So this is that track. So you hear that, how the delay's sort of playing with the melody and the rhythmic feel. and it accompanies that lead guitar quite nicely. And then we bring in this guitar part. So all of these guitar tracks at the top have the capo on the 7th fret. This one is not a partial capo though. I did this as a full capo across the 7th fret. And this one's just ambient again. In the same way that you use a synthesizer. A pad just to create the space. And then here, those three guitars continue as they are. The drums throughout, it's quite a laid-back groove. Again, I'll solo that for you. Obviously, it's 124 BPM, so it's not slow. But I didn't want anything too forceful. It's quite gentle, a lot of ghost notes. And it just gives that sort of driving feel to what would otherwise be. So if I take out the drums and just have everything else going, it's quite a sad sounding piece. It feels quite slow and lethargic, and then you bring in those drums and it just lifts everything. So the next part I'm going to discuss with you is these two green tracks, the synth and the electric piano. So this is something that I worked on with my supervisor, who is predominantly a pianist and a keyboard player, and he understands how to create these soundscapes and play into this progressive ambient sort of ideology. So the strings, it was important, I think, to add a really strong melody, like we did in the synthwave piece with the lead synth. And so that's why we added in this string section. And each note is obviously a bar's worth of they don't alter. There's no like crotchets or quavers. It's all, each note is a bar. Equates to a bar, and it juxtaposes nicely with this electric piano sound. I tried to sort of sculpt it into a really Rhodesy sound. So we'll play those two together. And what I love about using an electric piano in that way is when you blend the octaves and it's not all stuck in one octave and you really spread it out across the keys, it just adds so much flavour and so much variety to the piece and so much warmth. So I'll play this section with the strings without the piano first. We have a really important little turnaround on the electric piano on the Rhodes sound, and it's the melody that I discussed in the synthwave experiment, with the sort of 2-note chords, and I'll just play that for you here. I just think it's such a pretty melody as well. That descending um, melody accompanied with everything else. It's so nice when you hear that sort of against everything else. And then here, the synth strings drop out, and the reason they do that is because of this guitar track here. So because that guitar track is changed from its sort of palm muted, very quiet and delicate section to being more prominent, the strings need to drop out to give it the space. So you hear how that works here. It just opens it up a little bit more, gives that guitar space to breathe. And then here they come back in because the guitar goes back into its old pattern. There's that turn around again. And I do also quickly want to talk to you about this part. So we'll play this from here. So the reason I put this in was to add some syncopation into the piece. And again, it's not something that you hear that audibly, but every now and again you just get the hint of it. You just get the feeling of that rhythmic pulse without it being too audible. And that was something that I wanted to try and play with in this piece as well, was rhythms and, the way that each instrument relates to each other. So, the way that the lead guitar relates to the second guitar, the way that the strings relate to the piano, the way that the bass is just chugging along throughout. It's just hanging out on those semi-quavers there. Quavers sorry. And so we finish this section here with one last turnaround from the electric piano. And we changed the key quite drastically there. So, in terms of the key change there, what we do, so the initial piece, it's played with the capo on the 7th fret. It's played as an E minor chord. The first section is based around an E minor to a C, and then when we get to here in bar 73, we move to sort of F shape. So it is an F chord, but instead of playing that the second fret on the G string, we play the open G, so you've got that dissonance. Instead of having the A, you've got the G. and then I move the root note around, so it's to F to E to F to G. So in terms of it being on the 7th fret, it'd be C, B, C, D in terms of your root notes there. So what I'll do here is I'll just quickly play this rhythm part. And you can see here that we've blended an electric guitar track with an acoustic track. And the reason for that is a lot of the time in progressive music, when they write clean parts, they tend to do this. They double up electric guitar with acoustic guitar, or nowadays the whole rage is the idea of using a piezo pickup, which allows you to blend an electric and an acoustic signal together to create this very specific sound. So here's the electric track. And then here's the acoustic track. So what it does is it just adds that very natural sound of the acoustic. And what we've also got here is this. So what we've got here is a phrase that's moving in 7. So 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. So it's actually in 8. And what it's doing is it's just again adding that rhythmic variation, and it's deliberately quiet because as this section builds, that becomes more prominent. So you can't really hear it that much at the moment. But it just adds a little bit of a texture to it. So what I'll do now is I'll play the start of this section in full so you can hear the lead guitars as well. And with the lead guitars, again, I was going for a sort of dual guitar harmony idea, but it's much less melodic and much more rhythmic here. And I've got them fading in to add the drama to the piece. So I just quickly want to talk about that transition there. So in this first section from bar 73 up to bar 79, you've got the bass note moving from F to E to F to G, or like I said, C to B to C to D. Now, when we get to here, so A to 1, we're moving between E, D sharp, E, and then F sharp in the root note. E, D sharp, E, F sharp, B. And you're back onto your C there on 85. And here in bar 89 is where we really put on a strong melody in this section. And I'll play that for you here. And I wanted it to sort of feel really smooth and legato. And then we take it back down again. And that's where this guitar part starts to become more prominent. And we also bring in another motif here that we establish in Winterborn View, which is one that I'll be talking about in another video. And it's one that I tried to use a couple of times throughout the piece, throughout the full composition of the symphony, because it's quite a strong melody and it's a really simple one as well. So it's a very nice, simple melody. And again, it's offsetting the other guitar parts and the rest of the track, and adding some rhythmic variation. So what I'll do here is we'll play it from just before, and then you can feel that difference when it comes in. Feel that juxtaposition of that offset lead pattern. And then we build again. Sorry, I'll just show you that ending. So I wanted those reverb trails and the delay trails to trail out at the end as well, really nicely. So that is the Baker Street Pubs track. And again, there's not specific artist references here. It's more the feel and the atmosphere that was influenced by artists such as Pink Floyd. Musically, it wasn't, in terms of the build-up of chords and the rhythms and the melodies, it was quite a free experience, this one, but still influenced by progressive bands such as Pink Floyd, and also, like I said, Dream Theater, with that layering of the guitars with the acoustic and electric, and just trying to create a really cohesive soundscape that sounds very natural and ambient and atmospheric. So in the next video we'll move on to the next track in Movement 2. Cheers.